May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. One of the things I think about reading stories from the Bible and trying to figure out what the message is, one of the things about that is that we come to it as we are, with our own experiences and our own understanding of things, what things have happened in our lives. And sometimes we might see it reflected in the story, or we might find our way into the story because of that, which I think is a great thing. And it's why you all should read the Bible. It's also why you should think about it. It's also why you shouldn't just listen to me tell you stuff and think, oh, well, that's how it is. You should think about it. Here's a question. What if those two disciples were not the first ones to follow him around? What if on that first day there'd been other disciples with John, and they'd actually gone and followed Jesus around, and Jesus had said to them, "What are you looking for?" And they'd said, "We're just trying to figure out what it is you're doing, because our boss, John, says that you're the one." And Jesus said, "Well, come and see." And they followed him for a little bit and then decided, I don't think so. So the next day, John says to two more disciples, "Go and follow Jesus." And they're the ones that say, "We'll stick with you." What if other followers of John had looked at Jesus and gone, "Okay, well, the boss says this is the guy, but I don't know. I don't see it. I'm going to stick with him. I'm going to stick with John." See, it's not just about the "what are you looking for, come and see" part. And it's certainly not about the "drop what you're doing and follow me" story. You still have to make a choice. You still have to decide. People sometimes feel God is talking to them, particularly if you talk to people who are in ministry as their vocation. We're all in ministry, but people who are ordained ministers or commissioned, they have call stories, right? And there are very definitely some who have heard the voice of God thunder unto them that they should be. And that's great. That's great. But I also think that this story is super important because it certainly connects with the people who haven't heard God that way, and maybe didn't say yes at first even, or at all. Because, again, that's the thing about who's telling the story. Well, the author of the Gospel of John, I think, just me thinking, I'm wondering about this, wrote later than the other Gospels. He would have, or she would have known the stories. And I think in their context of seeing people who are kind of starting to doubt a little bit and were maybe questioning things, the author of John decided to tell the story a little differently. To tell the story in a way that wasn't, "You shall follow me, drop what you're doing, and follow me," and they do, but more about how you need to choose to follow. And how those first followers of Jesus responded to Jesus saying, "What are you looking for? Why don't you come and see if you can find it with me?" There's two pieces there that are really important, and neither of them is, "I command unto you that thou shalt drop what you're doing and come and follow me." If you hear God that way, that's great, as long as that leads you to connecting with God. That's awesome. Let me just clarify what I mean there. As long as that leads you to connecting with God not church or a particular church leader or a particular ideology, but God. Just to be clear about that. But if you're one of those people who say, for example, you thought you were going to be a priest when you were 15 years old, and it took you until you were well into your 40s to figure out that you should actually get around to it now. This is a great story. Particularly if you try and wonder a little bit about whether there might have been more to it. Like, why say John announced this is Jesus and points him out and tells John tells the story of the baptism, right? Without actually telling the baptism story, right? The dove appears. This is the one, the Spirit is upon him thing. Why have him tell it one day and then the next day he has to point Jesus out a second time and two of his followers peel off and go and follow Jesus? And see, part of my wondering about that is I wonder if the reason for that is because no one picked him up on it the first day. Or some of his disciples did, and they didn't stick with Jesus. They came back to John. Or, for that matter, they might have even been followers of John, went to check out Jesus and went, you know what? None of this is for me. I'm just going to go back to, like, fishing or building furniture or whatever they were doing. What if the story isn't as clear as it appears? What if there are others who didn't? And for that matter, what if, since one of those disciples, new disciples of Jesus, takes up that same idea of, what are you looking for? Come and see. What if others don't respond to that? Not everybody responded to Jesus. So for me, that's not just a question of that story really speaks to me because it was my experience. That story really speaks to me because it ought to speak to the church about how it addresses people. Because if you just say, Jesus is the one you will follow, come to my church, please don't wonder why no one comes. Because perhaps what they're really looking for is for someone to say, what do you need? What are you looking for? And when you say, well, maybe they're going to say, come and see what we offer. Try it out. See if you can belong here. So that's the thing. Every week, we begin the service by saying how we welcome everyone. And not just welcome everyone, but affirm people how they are, who they are, because we want to make a safe place for people to belong. But you don't belong simply by fitting in. You don't belong just because you're like everyone else or you agree on things and you all get along fine. You belong because you bring you. And that impacts the community. It helps make the community, it helps it grow, it helps form it. That's what creates community. But it has to begin with, what are you looking for? Because maybe what we're offering here isn't what you're looking for. You won't know that unless you answer and try it out. So come and see. And here's another interesting thing about that story, is that it says, the New Revised Standard Version translates that as, as they remained with Jesus for the rest of the day. There are a lot of biblical scholars who suggest that the real word that properly translates the meaning there isn't remain, it's abide. But we don't use abide very often, unless we're singing the hymn, right? But the difference is, remain is just like stay. But abide implies connection. It's meant to imply that you're creating a relationship, that there's an intimacy to the connection. That's what we're looking for. First of all, that may well be part of what people are seeking to begin with, but also, as a community of faith, that is what we're looking for. We're looking for people to feel like they can abide, that they can belong, connect, not just that they fit in or that they like what they hear or that they're learning something or they appreciate being, but they bring something too. There's a connection made. That's what we're looking for. I hope. Because otherwise, we might as well just invite people to a lecture where somebody tells them what to think and solves all their problems because I have all the right answers. That's part of the choice too, though, isn't it? Because sometimes that is exactly what people are looking for. They want answers. And that's tricky because, to be truthful and honest about it, we don't have them all the time. What we have is a willingness to connect with people and find a way to an answer, to travel with them, to journey with them. That, I think, is, again, one of my favorite things about the First Nations version of the New Testament. That translation is that the kingdom of heaven is described as a good road. Well, of course it is, because it's a journey. It's a constant journey, because we're on it. So what we want to do is travel the good road with people. Be on a journey. So maybe we're traveling in a VW bus and you'd like to be in a Lincoln Navigator. Or maybe we're a little too fancy for you and you'd like a 67 Volkswagen Beetle. But you won't know unless you come and see, is the thing. And so I always think our message to people should be come and see. Especially for people who have already decided they know what church is. Because it isn't 9 times out of 10. I'm quite certain about that. And the only way that you could possibly find out is to come and see. So if you are inviting people to come and join us on a Sunday morning or on a weekday for coffee or at an event, a supper, a movie, anything, what we need to be saying is, what are you looking for? Because this is what we're offering. Why don't you come and see? Come and try it out. And be prepared for them to say no. Be prepared for them to come and try it out and not come back. Because that's another reason why this story is so important to me, is because it doesn't just reflect the 2 guys that decided to follow, and then they started picking up others, some of whom, by the way, responded to, "You should come," not an invitation, but a command. Because we all come to God our own way. And in seeking that way, finding that way, the best way to do it is together. But only if we allow for understanding what people are looking for and offer them an opportunity to see it here. Or an opportunity to see that it isn't here, but they can bring it. And we are open to that. That, to me, in fact, is the best part. Not that we're already exactly all that we should be, but that we never are. That we're always open to others. We're always open to what others bring to the community. It may be exactly what we need. It might not. But but we won't know unless we look and find out. Engage it. Be part of it. I have so many questions about the other story. So many questions, for which I think I can find answers. But the great thing about this story is that when I wonder if there weren't others who kind of were checking Jesus out and decided not to follow, it opens a door on wondering why. And that is really useful to us. Because when we invite people to come and see, when we ask them what they're looking for, when we invite them to be part of what we're doing, if they say no, we shouldn't just go, well, okay. First of all, I think we should encourage them to seek it somewhere else and not just drop it. But also, I think we should wonder why we're not. Is it because that's not part of us? Is it because it's just not something we connect with? Is it because we're not open to it? I think there's such a great learning in this story for how we are as a faith community, not just as individuals, but as a community. And how important it is for us to invite people by asking them what they're looking for and inviting them to come and find it with us.